Hello everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is the build review of the Hobbico TwinStar. It's a great flying airplane. I want to give you some hints and tips on how to make this a successful airplane just for you. Okay, let's go into my shop and take a look at it. One of the first great things is, of course, eBay. You can buy this on eBay for $160, free shipping and no tax if you're lucky. And it's amazing how many people just don't know about eBay. But it's a great way to save money and spend money. Anyway, just taking a look at the kit first. Of course, there's the nose. But you know, one thing is interesting. I always thought of maybe putting another engine on the front. You could have a tri-motor. Now that would be different at the flying field, wouldn't it? A tri-motor, that would be interesting. Maybe a 10 or 15 up front. Of course, you'd have to put some lead in the tail. It's going to be a little bit more heavier, but that would sound really cool with 3 engines running. Now that I've got everything laid out here, one of the first things you probably want to do is go ahead and re-shrink all of the covering. I use a combination of a heat gun and a monocoat iron to make that effective. After I heat shrink the covering back, I'm going to start cutting out holes where needed, where the glue is going to be used on the balsa wood. There's the throttle servo cut out, and you can see I've removed some of the monocoat. Now we're going to look at the ailerons here in just a second. That's what comes with a kit. That's 1 inch wide. Now this is one of my tips. If you want to go the extra mile, go with a 2 inch wide aileron. You see what kit? It's only 1 inch. And you really need this for a number of reasons. And one of them, if the engine fails, a combination of aileron and rudder can help maintain control. But we'll talk more about that later. Now the elevator, not a problem. It's adequate. And of course you can see there I've already cut out my areas where glue is going to be used. And the elevator is certainly not a problem. You can use that right out of the kit. Perfect. I'll tell you, this is probably the most important single tip that you need to consider: building a larger rudder. Now I'm using the 2 inch stock that I use my ailerons with, but thinking back, I would go a 3 inch rudder. You really need it in case of engine failure, but it's just more efficient. Yeah, you're going to spend a little extra time building it, but that's okay. You got a lot of time and money invested in this machine. And on the engine pods, you got a right and a left, so don't get those mixed up. Also, I've gone back in and re-glued everything on the inside, and go back with sealer to make sure it's fuel proof after you're done with that. Now you can see where I've gone in and re-glued. You see the tight bond that I've used. And you just do that over a day or two. Because think about it, you got 2 engines here, twice as much vibration going on. Easy to do. And of course the engines. You've got to have reliable engines no matter what you use. You can't go wrong with OS. I'm using 2 OS 32H helicopter engines. Why? Well, they were just available on eBay. I bought one used for $40 and I bought one new for $75. And the E3030 muffler will fit perfectly on that, and don't forget your gasket. Okay, here next are the coming up right here are the 2 fuel tank covers, and you'll trim those out, and there's a very fine line that you'll be able to see. You probably can't see it on the camera, but you can use to trim it out. I just used a Dremel tool. Of course, there's your kit instructions. About all I used on it was weight and balance, the only thing I needed. This will be my third TwinStar of all things. The first one I was doing touch and goes, hit a little bit hard on one side and stopped one of the engines, gave it full power, took off, lost control over it, went behind some trees, and that was the end of number 1. Number 2 got stolen. That wasn't very nice. And anyway, they say the third one's the charm, so this one must be it. Hope so anyway. Okay, here's the finished aileron. Of course, it's the red one now. It's 2 inches wide, and I put, instead of 3 hinges the kit has in, I made a total of 5 for additional redundancy. Easy to do, quick and easy, not a problem. See the difference there in the ailerons. You really need that in case the engine fails. It's going to help you overall in the control of the airplane. Of course, the what else do we have here coming up? There's the rudder. Now that I look at it, I'd go back to a 3-inch wide rudder instead of the 2-inch that I put on there. And the elevator is adequate for this airplane, not a problem. Another important tip is be sure you have 5-minute epoxy, 15-minute epoxy, and 30-minute epoxy, because different parts of this airplane you'll need more time or less time in putting those assemblies together. Now, of course, here I am with the Dremel, and I'll cut out the very fine line that obviously you can't see in this video, but that's really easy to do. And of course, using that Dremel will certainly help. And another tip I want to tell you about, of course, we know how alcohol helps remove epoxy that hasn't cured, but something's even better is goof off. You can clean your whole airplane with goof off, remove every fingerprint. Anyway, I'm just testing the engine covers, gas tank cover, and we'll get more into it in just a moment. Here's the spar. I use 15-minute epoxy on it. Initially, put it in a clamp, let it cure, and of course I got the help of a nice belt sander, and I want to make it just where it's a press fit as it goes in, and glue it to the one side and let that cure. I would highly recommend using 30-minute epoxy for this. And don't forget that goof off. You'll like it better than alcohol. So of course I use the different cure rates on the epoxy: 30-minute, 15, or 5, depending on what I'm working on. And 30 minutes is definitely what you want to use for your spar, just to give you the time. And goof off, you'll love it once you start using it. Yeah, you'll still use alcohol, but you'll see the benefits of goof off. You can get goof off at any hardware store generally. Home Depot has it. Lowe's probably has it too. Get you a bottle of that and just keep it handy. Now I'm going to glue the two wing halves together. Of course, use 30-minute epoxy there. And I'm just using weights, anything I can to hold that one side down. It does have some dihedral. I forget the exact amount. It might be 2 inches at the wingtip, but just look in the instruction book and it'll tell you the right number to use. I am using 30-minute epoxy, but I'm going to let this cure overnight before I take it off the bench. Even though they cure relatively quickly, you really need to have more time to let it set up. On your aileron connections here, you see I'm going to widen that space out vertically so that there's more throw that I can get and it doesn't bind, obviously. Just use a Dremel, get in there, widen it up. That'll be just fine. Easy to do, no problem. Okay, now inside the fuselage, I'm going to start going around every area that I can and put a layer of tight bond down, and let it cure on one side, then you'll have to flip it over, do the other side. Remember, you got two engines here with a lot of vibration, and of course you can see there where I've put some additional glue down to reinforce it. And you'll do that over a couple day period, both sides. Everywhere you can get some tight bond in, do it. I was going to tell you, as far as hardware goes, I'm sure a lot of this is metric, and of course we like to use here the English version. So I'm going to use 256 rod threads. Of course, there's some balsa covering. It's just a way to seal those engine areas where the tank's going to be in case there's a fuel leak. Definitely want to put some clear dope in there or something. Even polyurethane will work if you got that around. That's fuel proof too. Another thing I did is I knocked out the 4 screws that hold the engine on, the blind nuts, and went with 440s because I knew they were the right size. Now here's the piece that you'll put in, and it's you just work it, trim it, and get it just right, and it'll snap in place. I wouldn't glue that down. I'd put a screw in it, and you'll see here in just a second. Of course, I've gone in everywhere I can and put more tight bond. You can see it. Just go the extra step. Real easy to do. Take your time on it. Not a problem. So these engine pods are going to be a little extra work, but just take your time, fill in the gaps, use Titebond, and go from there. Now on the vertical stab, I used 15-minute epoxy for that. And then of course you use your goof off to wipe it off while it's still not cured, and it'll come right off. You'll love it. Of course the horizontal stab, I used 30-minute epoxy. You can use alcohol. I still use alcohol, but that goof off will really save your day. And of course we'll give that time to cure. Now the next thing we're going to look at, just go back to those engine pods here in just a second, and you'll see where I've knocked out the blind nuts that came with the kit on the firewall, and I put in my own 440s. Why? Because I know the 440 screw that I'm going to put in it is going to fit properly. And of course I want to use Loctite on all those after I'm finished mounting the engine on. There's a 440, I believe it's a 1-inch, and that's just the right size to use and install. Be sure and use your Loctite too. Blue Loctite. I did use the engine mounts that came with the kit. They're fine, and they're expandable depending on the width of your engine, so that's kind of handy. I just want to kind of mount it up here. You can kind of see where I'm going to eventually end up installing it. Not way out front, but as far back as I can get it, but make sure that that throttle assembly doesn't jam up against the side of the motor mount, and you'll see that in just a minute. I would recommend putting the engine on that mount to where it's as far back as you can reasonably get it, because of the effect of the nose weight. You definitely don't want to be adding more tail weight if you have to, but you'll see it. You'll figure that out here. Okay, coming up next is the muffler again. That's the E3030. It'll fit perfectly on that SXH helicopter engine. And don't forget to take the restrictor out that's on the inside. Matter of fact, all your mufflers have this on OS anyway, most of them. And one of the first things I do is I take that out, because that'll rob you about 10% of power. And then I'll put it back together with RTV and on the screw, and I'll use Loctite on the nut to finish tightening it up. And be sure and get your muffler gaskets. You don't want to have any leaks on that engine. There's your restrictor. Now let's talk about this next part on the gas tank. Now I'm just testing it. Put it in there. Of course I'm going to put a piece of foam on the bottom side. Right there you'll see. And you'll see the engine gas tank top side is up. There's your piece of foam. Kind of figure it out. That's kind of how it's going to look. Then the top piece will snap in place. Now I'm not going to glue that in. I'm going to put one screw in it to hold it in place in case I need to remove it. I don't know if they tell you to glue it in or not, but I sure wouldn't do it, because you know what happens when that happens. You end up having to bust it out. So there's the assembly with the tanks installed. One screw, just use a servo screw to hold it in place. Makes it easy. Okay, now I've got them finished. There's your fuel line. I used one green for the fuel, and blue is for the exhaust pressure tap that we all use. But that's how it all looks. Okay, now let's take a look at the wing. One of the first things you'll use is a Y connector, which will be one wire to the receiver, and the other two will Y out to the servos. And what you want to do is test it and make sure they go both the right direction. If they don't, they also make a Y connector that you can switch and reverse one servo direction, which you might need. Okay, now I'm ready to glue the engine pods on. And of course, you want to fit them, make sure they're right. Make sure you got the left one on the left side and the right one on the right side. The thrust line should point toward the wingtip. You could reverse these, make a mistake, and it would totally ruin your airplane. So be sure and don't forget that. There's a left and a right. And of course use your 30-minute epoxy. Then you can remove the glue before it cures with goof off, and you'll see it work itself around the plane. You just need to wipe it off. Take your time. I'll be using APC props because they're so efficient in what they do. Of course, I'm going to balance each propeller. Think about it, we got two engines running here. I want to try to reduce that vibration as much as I can. So if you have the ability to do that, do it. I'm going to start with a 10.5. At first I thought I was going to start with a 9.6 propeller, but I think I could handle a 9.5, but I won't know until I fire up the engines at a later date. As far as fishing your wires that you need to connect the servos and everything to the receiver, I just used a piece of wire and stuck it in there, taped it off and pulled it through. There is a string that they have pre-installed in there that you could tie off to if you need to, but one of them slipped out or whatever, didn't work, but it's not a problem. You can get a wire in there and pull it through. That's what I ended up doing. Now let's talk about the servo install. Okay, here's how you can see how I ended up doing the servo installs for the throttle controls. I just use the same standard servo, but with the height of the connection that you see there, when you put the engine, the white cover on it, there's not enough clearance for it. So I had to cut the hole out bigger and literally glue the throttle servo using wing tape and just glued it in. That was a simple solution. If not, just use a smaller servo, micro servos will help on that install if you don't want to do what I did and just glued it in place like that. Of course, there you can see the simple quick connect. That way it makes it easy to adjust both engines to the right amount of throw that you're going to need. And then once I'm satisfied with the connection, I'll go back and use a blue Loctite when I'm finished with the alignment of everything. Okay, there's just another closer view of the other one. I'm just kind of holding it in place there to allow the epoxy to cure. But you'll figure out your way you want to do it. There's obviously more than one way to get that linkage all to work. For my aileron, I wanted to make sure I had clearance on those push rods, so I kind of dug that area out, sanded it out, just to make sure I had plenty of throw. Then I went back behind that and put a block. I'm not sure if that's really necessary, but you can check it out later. Here I wanted to show you just as a benchmark so you can measure it from whatever engine you decide to use, that this came out to about 13 ounces per engine on the OS SX H 32 engines. Now this was kind of interesting. I had to use two different throttle connectors. You see the one is further in and the other one is not as far. That way, if you don't have something like that with these engines being pointed outward, one side will have clearance for the throttle control and one won't. So the simple solution for me was to use two different types of arms, and you'll see that when you build it. That'll definitely come up and you'll have to think about that one, but there's an easy fix for it if that works for you. And when I'm ready to install these engines, I want to go ahead and put you see the throttle push rod's already in place. Got the fuel line in. I'm going to mount those engines in there, I'm going to actually connect the throttle control to it before I actually bolt it down, just to make it a little bit easier to do. Now on the muffler you will have to carve out a little bit larger area, and don't forget your gasket there, and use Loctite. Now I changed those screws out and used the ones that have the hex shape on them instead of just a Phillips, just so I can tighten them down a lot better. One issue that came up was on these helicopter engines, the propeller shaft wasn't quite long enough. So I had to go back in and I bought these from Fox Manufacturing extensions, and I had to cut them with a Dremel wheel to make it all work. So if that comes up for you, if you're going to use this setup, get those Fox Manufacturing extensions and that'll make everything just right, pretty and nice for you. Okay, now that I got the engines mounted, I want to start checking my CG. So you can see the marks I've got right there. I can't remember if it's 3 1/4, whatever it is. Take a look in the book to make sure. Because what I'm trying to figure out is, where am I going to need to put my battery? Is it going to be up there in the nose? Or is it going to need to be in the tail? Or can I put it right on the inside? It turned out I put the battery inside where the receiver was. Now as far as decals go, one of the little tricks is to use soapy water, a few drops of dishwashing liquid. That way when you put on the decal, if it's crooked or you got air bubbles in it or whatever, you can pick it, pull it back off, put it back down, and then I use a credit card or something like that to get all the bubbles out of it. And you want to let that dry for about 24 hours. Okay, here you can see where the elevator servo is, top right. The rudder, of course, is up front there. And I've got a wire going through up to the nose wheel. Simple enough. And I figured out that the battery is going to mount right in there. Even though there's plenty of room up front, it turned out to be perfectly balanced. I'm using a 6-cell nickel metal hydrate battery there, 6 volt, to run all this. And then I put the receiver on top of that, and you'll see that here in just a minute. Now here's another view again of the throttle setups, and you're going to spend the most time on this kit with these engine pods and servos, getting it all lined up. But I like using the quick release right there, so I can just adjust them real easy. And of course the fuel tank cover there will snap in place with one screw to hold it in. I don't glue it. I don't know if the plans tell you to, but I wouldn't. And there's my 6-volt battery, and that's where it's going to go. This whole airplane balanced out perfectly with everything just the way I had it set up. And the battery goes in first, 6 volt. I tried using a gyro as a test, thinking this would be a really cool idea, but it didn't really work out. My idea was to have it working. When the engine failed, the rudder would kick the other direction, but that gyro quite won't do that, so that probably got scrapped. I think the Hobbico TwinStar would be a great project. Be sure to get reliable engines for this kit, and don't forget the rudder. Put a 3-inch rudder on there, and I highly recommend the 1-inch ailerons. I want to tell you guys thanks for watching. And also let me know if you guys, anybody out there puts a 3rd engine up front. I'd love to see a photograph of it or hear the sound of it on YouTube. That would be pretty cool. So when the weather gets a little better, I'll do a flight review. I'm going to mount a camera up on top that has a GPS data logger built into it, so you'll be able to see real-time airspeed, altimeter, and heading all on the video at the same time. So my friends, until next time, we'll see you in the air. You guys have a great day. Bye-bye.